South Africa. And for 2020, this is going to be a virtual affair. The pandemic has thrown us in the deep end while advancing and engaging more with technology. It's been 64 years, 64, since the women marched to union buildings against the past laws that deemed Black people substandard citizens in their country. This year, we commemorate this act with the following theme: Generation Equality, realizing women's rights for an equal future. We kickstart the program with Gert Sibande and Mpumalanga Choral Ensemble singing the African Union Anthem, to be followed by the South African National Anthem.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let's make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice on earth. Sons and daughters of Africa, of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and toil together to give the best life to Africa. The cradle of mankind and font of culture, bride and hope, break of dawn. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, make Africa the tree of life.
Wow, thank you so much, Gert and the ensemble, for that lovely performance. I'm sure you'll agree with me that anthems always seem to move something in one's soul, and it always leaves me feeling nostalgic. I don't know about you, I'm sure in the spirit of celebrating Women's Month now, receive the official opening remarks Premier of Mpumalanga, Miss Pane.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a and privilege to address you as we pay homage to Imbokodo. Today, in saluting our unsung heroines who taught us the true meaning of courage, sacrifice, and determination in pursuit of the noble goal of political and socio-economic equality. This year, we commemorate 64 years since our gallant heroines such as Joseph, Umama Lilian Goyi, Umama Sophia Williams, and many more women stood up against the oppressive system of apartheid. 20,000 women who gathered in Pretoria on the 9th of August in 1956 proved through words and more through actions that Wathinta Abafazi, Wathinta Imbokodo. Commemorate the heroines of 1956 and seek to draw strength and inspiration from their deeds as we confront the scourge of gender-based violence, which is a blight not only to their lives but also to the rainbow envisaged by the architects of our Constitution. As women, we live with the daily knowledge that no space is safe for us because of this scourge. We and society as to partake in our initiative to ensure that there is no safe place for perpetrators of gender-based violence. We urge survivors and anyone who is aware of ongoing cases of gender violence to report the toll-free gender-based violence hotline on 0800 428 428. It is our collective responsibility to end the scourge of gender-based violence, and in recognition of this fact, Mpumalanga provincial government will continue to work with stakeholders from all sectors to ensure that we create safer communities for our women and children. It is indeed an affront to the legacies of Omama Charlotte Xeke and Albertina Sisulu to find women occupying a low percentage of managerial positions in Mpumalanga. For example, women occupy 36.4% of senior managerial position in the provincial administration. My commitment is to implement gender parity during the course of this administration. We have started this process and have ensured that the female occupy 50% of accounting officer roles within the provincial government. There is a long journey ahead of us, but as Lao Tzu once remarked, quote, open quote, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, close quote. Ladies and gentlemen, we must also acknowledge the fact that the women are disproportionately affected by unforeseeable pandemics such as COVID-19 pandemic. The state of disaster declared by His Excellency, the President of the Republic, did slow the spread of the pandemic and flattened the curve. However, we must also acknowledge that the imposition of the lockdown has affected the livelihood of millions of women in both the formal and informal sectors. To this effect, and in an effort to empower women and address the legacies of economic oppression, the Mpumalanga provincial government will prioritize the extension of strategic support to youth-owned SMEs. This by expanding our initiatives in the agricultural economy, by extending support and prioritizing funding to female-owned commercial farming enterprises through the Incubation Program. Through these initiatives, we will expedite the development of young enterprises in the agricultural sphere. Furthermore, through Youth Development Fund that we have established with a 50 million endowment, we will prioritize female-owned enterprises when evaluating entities to which strategic support will be granted. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware of the magnitude of the task bestowed upon our generation of leaders in striving for gender parity while the safety of our women and children, but the fortitude of Umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela and the indomitable spirit of Nokuthula Simelane. It is our responsibility to ensure their sacrifices were not in vain. Now more than ever, we personify the adage that Mosadi Utshwara Thipa ka bohaleng. We must endeavor to be the change we wish to see in the world. That means that we must discourse and affirm the position that dictates that nothing about us without us. As we honor our strong women, may we strive to know them, to be them, and to raise them. With this being said, I wish to join the millions of South Africans with a happy Women's Day. I thank you.
Thank you so very much, Premier Mtsweni Tsipane, for the opening remarks. We shall receive messages of support from our esteemed ministers, youth and people with disabilities, Me Maita Nkwane Mashabane. A message will then be followed by Minister Nathi Mthethwa from Sports, Arts and Culture.
Program Director, Your Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa of the Republic of South Africa, Minister of Arts and Culture, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa, Honorable Premier of Mpumalanga Province, Mr. Refilio Mtsweni Tsipane, distinguished guests, fellow South Africans. I'm pleased to join you as we celebrate 2020 Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights for an Equal Future. This year, we celebrate this important day under difficult circumstances due to COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, while the generation of 1956 faced different challenges, system and colonization, the current generation is similar challenges under different circumstances. These include patriarchy, poverty, gender-based violence, and more. Despite progress made in achieving women empowerment in 6 years, challenges remain. Gender-based violence and continues to be our clarity to all South Africans is to do their part to end gender discrimination and gender-based violence and femicide. We demand justice and harsh sentences for the perpetrators of gender-based violence and femicide. Fellow South Africans, we need to promote economic and financial emancipation of women without the full participation of women in our country. We also need to reclaim our space internationally, and working together, we will achieve this. Let us rally behind our women and women with disabilities to advance their rights, political, economic, social, cultural spheres. Let's join hands and to patriarchy, gender-based violence and femicide, and economic of women. Let's invest in women entrepreneurship to grow our countries. We need to support the continued strengthening and further development of women's capacity in leadership, ownership, and entrepreneurship. Use this year's commemoration to recommit our country where boys and girls, men and women, young and the elderly, and everyone is free to walk everywhere in our country. Happy Women's Day. Malibongwe.
Program Director, His Excellency President of the Republic, President Ramaphosa, Minister in the Presidency, Minister Nkwana Mashabane, Deputy Minister Mzee, Ministers and Deputy President, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, fellow South Africans, I extend my warmest greetings to all of you. The circumstances of our day, the changes of our time forces us to and we did not anticipate this year, last year. The whole world has been turned upside down by the virus. However, the resilience of humanity will conquer this challenge. In order for us to do so, we need to observe the health protocols by the Health Organization. We have gathered to celebrate the theme Realizing Women's Rights for an Equal Future, which is embedded in the Global Equality Campaign, as well as the contextual factors in our country. Placed in the context of pandemics of COVID and gender-based violence, the urgent need to
the life of people living with disability difficult to our president, government, civil society, and women in communities who are addressing these challenges. Our deepest condolences go to the loved ones of those who lost their lives in the new battle. Finally, congratulations to the Ahmed Kafrada and Sophie DeBrain Foundations for the project to recognize more of the women of the 1956 march to the Union buildings. On my part, I will be adding to the 2 Malibongwe booklets that recognize different women who played a role in support of our democracy. I thank you.
Thank you, Meshope, for your enlightening message. As I highlighted earlier, I'll be moderating this virtual program, which involves a panel discussion. I'm joined in studio by outstanding South African women who will today engage the nation on women-centered issues. I would love to welcome and introduce to you our esteemed panelists, whose discussions will inform the President's address at a later stage during the program. With me today, I have Ms. Nomasonto Mazibuko, who will talk to rights, including persons with albinism. I have Ms. Masutane Mojaji from the South African Federation for Mental Health, and she'll address the impact of COVID-19 on women's mental health. The moderator today is Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, looking beautiful in green. We want to commemorate, we want to celebrate, but we have to dig deep, and we're digging deep today as we talk mental health, especially times that we're facing with COVID-19. Ms. Masutane Mojaji, I'm sure that the Federation for Mental Health has been inundated, especially in a time like this.
Thank you, Rami, and definitely, yes, we are living in unique times where everybody is just overwhelmed by the impacts of the COVID-19, especially their mental well-being. So this has not only affected people with pre-existing disabilities, but because we are affected by the pandemic, we are one way or another impacted mentally. We are encouraging communities to do what they can to look after their mental well-being, check up on people who are experiencing mental health problems. There was a global study that was conducted by the United Nations Population Fund in 2018, and that study found that disabilities in general, including psychosocial and intellectual disabilities, are 10 times more likely to experience domestic violence, gender-based violence, unlike women without any disabilities.
Is it more so during this time, or are these stats continuously on the rise, regardless of the pandemic?
I think in South Africa, we've seen during the early stages of the lockdown that started in March, there were already reporting that they are experiencing an influx of women who are seeking shelters as a result. GBV in itself is a social risk for developing a mental health problem. So it's important that whatever information and services are available for mental health are available and accessible to women in shelters. That being said, again, we as the South African Federation for Mental Health, we work with 17 mental health societies. They are providing direct services to communities, and working consistently to provide an excellent model of mental health services in the communities.
Yeah. I mean, she said a mouthful there, Ms. Mojaji, in terms of just overstretched during this time. But I love also what she said is, we don't check in with each other. How are you doing? DM, how are you doing?
I'm good. Would you like me to?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for introducing us to such an important issue. I'm just interested in gender equality aspect. Girls and women suffer more from mental health problems as they tend to give they do more, they check on other people?
Absolutely, Deputy Minister. I think girls and women, especially in the rural areas, are more as vulnerability is increased because of social factors such as domestic violence as well at home, poverty, ill health. This increases their likelihood of developing mental health problems as a result. And this is one of the things that was mentioned in a government document, the National Mental Health Policy Framework and Strategic Plan 2013 to 2020. It comes to an end this year, so we need to reflect on that. But what it flagged and identified was the need to improve equitable allocation of resources and also just increase access to mental health services so that these women, especially those who find themselves in rural areas, can have an ongoing access to mental health services when they need and they know where to go. And this is an area where we are hoping government will be able to lead us in terms of like policy development and implementation and coordinating consultations across sectors. We hope in government will be able to lead us with that so that we can at least have an equal allocation of resources so that women also are able to access this as and when they need.
Very, very important.
Yeah, you know, just a quick one for me. I mean, I'm sitting Kanyamazane. You know, I have Gogo Mang, who is Isangoma. I have a woman of Umanyano. How those in community resources are able to assist vulnerable people within a community?
Definitely, we well, I mean, community organizations provide services and are available, but then they lack the capacity, they lack the resources, and then they lack also even the information and the support. And I think this is an area that also needs to be strengthened, and that we offer them the support so that they are able to provide this kind of services, mental health services, to this woman in Kanyamazane who is looking for that at a place closer to where she lives or where she works.
There's some really great work being done on the ground. It is said that 1 in 6 South Africans are affected by mental illness in some way or form. Let's hear now from Ms. Nomasonto Mazibuko, disability rights, including persons with albinism.
Thank you very much. And I would say it is a pleasure to be on the same panel with the Deputy Minister who has been appointed to be our champion. And that it means education. Let me speak about albinism. Albinism is a condition where people with albinism have different kinds of the skin and they are visually impaired. But the point that I want to put across is that both parents who don't have albinism are not aware why they get this child with albinism. Now, the woman is blamed for bringing this curse into the family. The woman is blamed to have slept with a person who is not the right partner or the husband. So women with albinism suffer in silence. I'm happy she's speaking of Gwanyama. The woman Gwanyamazane is suffering in silence. Inequality in this country is not only on women. As we speak COVID-19, we don't know if the sanitizers were manufactured with the thought of people with albinism. Our skin is sensitive. We were together with the Deputy Minister, launching the voices of visually impaired and blind women. Those women are not looked at, even if when they go to GPV, the people in the police station still want to know if we are socially and physically involved in sexual activities. Why are we looked as if we are objects and not? We're happy to be South Africans. Can our voice be heard? Can we work together? Minister, to work with you, don't want to be an afterthought to say, by the way, this speaks about women with disabilities. We would like to make the President aware that as he is chairing the AU, people with need to be protected in whatever that you are going to achieve, because we killed as girl children and women in Africa. And can we unite in putting across that people with albinism, their body parts do not have any muti, and don't have any power to give you luck, as you moderating this panel today.
I think you raise a good point there, Ms. Mazibuko, as a person living with albinism, that I think it's more, Deputy Minister, of a woman being differently abled as opposed to disabled.
Yeah, I think we have to maybe go back to our commissioner there, Masibuko, in terms of really how do we ensure that younger women today are prepared to speak out, are prepared to record their experiences of marginalization, of being treated differently, long even before they disappear from communities, long before even they are attacked.
The theme of the United Nations says, bridging the generation gap. I think as we sit here as older women, we have seen how older women have looked down on younger women. Let me cite the issue of divorce. When a young woman goes, it is the older person, your place is now finished. You belong to them kisses. We don't expect you back. And when this young woman, the marriage doesn't work, it is the very older woman who ridicules the young women. I have to speak about the Sangoma and the church. The church doesn't allow young women to come into and say, I didn't make it in this marriage, so can I be accepted? I think it is this year that we are going to have action and speak to all those areas that are very sensitive of a woman who has a disability, of a woman who has autism, to be accepted fully and not be thought about. Health that is not looked after. How many of us, as she has said, have we checked on one another since COVID?
Ms. Mazibuko, good points, and I think, Deputy Minister, there's also a tapestry here. There's such links, especially between mental awareness. We're talking about disability, but it's the same. I love how the Commissioner said that the Deputy Minister, you are the champion. You're the champion for women, for children. Is the load you bear, is it overbearing, or do you feel you are the champion, you are the difference, you are the agent of change?
I see all of us as agents of change. We can no longer drag the discussion and say people should continue to disappear, to be discriminated against, to be attacked. The question is, how do we ensure that in the next 5 to 10 we see concrete results whereby person's rights are realized and respected by all? It's a burden upon all of us, the system as a whole, that, you know, for instance, when Mazibuko mentions the kind of sanitizers that are suitable for sensitive skins, so I could see a coalition also. So the needs of persons with disability or people with albinism, they are not limited to the rights only, but we have to look at manufacturing, we have to look at power, economic inclusion, we have to look at energy. So it broadens the space which we should occupy. You know, the point I was interested in also from Mr. Zibuko is a question of the justice system, because really at the end, when we think about government, we think police, the courts, and so on. What do you think we should do to empower police in such a way that women who come are not asked the same questions in terms of how sure this person did that to you? Because that must be a state for women.
Yes, Deputy Minister, the first thing is to employ people with disabilities. The APS has integrated. There is a unit that is called groups, but most of the police stations don't have the designated rooms for people who have been abused. If I come as a deaf person, there must be a sign language interpreter. All is saying, let's work together. These are there. We don't want to be reading, they are gathering dust. As we speak right now, policies need us to go and implement. It is the time for government to implement. Government cannot implement by its own. It's going to implement with us.
I love when it doesn't just fall on the Deputy Minister, but collectively, we as women are standing together to be those changes. If you take a look at worldwide statistics, 400 million people are affected by illness. And if you take a look at the stats of GBV, only 1 in 9 cases go reported. 19, we would love in keeping our social distance, no masks, in order for you to be able to hear us. When we come back, our next panelists join us. This time, Judy Nokwedi talks about money within our how women drive the economy, however, still earn less than men. And a GBV survivor talks about how she lives and breathes today, and GBV, how it's affected her life. We continue to commemorate Women's Day this Sunday right here. And albeit different due to COVID-19, I'd like to thank Ms. Mazibukwa as well as Ms. Mujaji for the insights shared. Joining our panel now is Judy Nokwedi, talking about women, economic empowerment and financial inclusion. She's the SG at the Black Council. And after that, we will be joined virtually by our gender-based violence activist, as she shares her story. Deputy Minister Hlengiwe is still here with us. Judy, a warm welcome to the panel. It's really good to have you in your bright, vibrant yellow. Happy Women's Day. Do I say a happy Women's Day? Can we use the word happy? If you take a look at, yes, the strides we've made, but that there's still so much that needs to be done, especially from an economic empowerment front.
There is nothing happy for women in South Africa. We've not been happy for many, many years. And the gains that we've made since the Beijing meeting 25 years ago, we've seen a gradual erosion year on year when it comes to the economic status of women, especially in the area of empowerment and financial inclusion. So I want to share a very little story to Ntombi story. A grandmother is teaching a child about life. And she says, there is a terrible fight going on inside of me, and it is between 2 wolves, a good wolf and a bad wolf. And the grandchild looks up at Gogo and says, Gogo, which wolf wins? And the grandmother, the Gogo, says, it is the one you feed. So a few days ago, I bumped into Ntombi. She's been working in a business in my neighborhood for more than 20 years. She's a young woman who always has a radiant smile, a sort of up-tempo beat. She was withdrawn, she was sad, and she was totally depressed, in a total state of despair. There are 20 women who work in this business, and it's a sector where women are dominated by women. And she says only 10 of them are allowed to work at a time. She does not know how she's going to pay her rent moving forward. She does not know how she is going to feed her children. She's always worked in the informal sector in Dobsonville to supplement her income. And she has identified a fantastic business opportunity, a niche product that has a huge market in the township. She needs to start the business. And she said, Wena Judy, you are with the Black Business Council. I hear on the radio all the time that there are funds for women. How do I access money? So we at the Black Business Council, in the Women's Foundation, lines, very, very clear vision around how you protect women. It's this simple. You put cash in the hands of women, you protect women. Black women do not have credit. They don't have access to things. They do not have trust funds, and they don't have investments. So it is important that we have access to markets, that we have access to funding and finance, and very, very importantly, if women do not have land and they don't have title deed, then they are left to the vagaries and to the prey of men who demand transactional sex, and they become subjects of gender-based violence. So we as the Black Business Council are very clear, put cash in the hands of women. And we want a South African economy that is led by Black business-owned women, small, medium and large.
Beautiful story that you tell, especially of you being a beacon of hope for Ntombi, where she went for those resources. But I think the touch points here are clear, Deputy Minister, in the need for Black women in this country.
Yeah, I think the starting point is to really say, yes, we still have to say Happy Women's Day, because that is not about us. With regard to economic inclusion, government has put in place so many policies which are meant to ensure, to fast track the inclusion of those who were left out before. Now we're talking about a district development model where we say that's where we should locate our projects, our opportunities, and so on, so that those women who don't come any closer to any business association are not left behind. The question is, what do we do differently so as to ensure that those women in rural areas at a district level are assisted to enter areas like agribusiness, the whole ecosystem, and to give them that sense of hope that much as the progress has been slow, but there's a determination, there's a political will, there's a commitment to make sure that they come out of the circumstances they find themselves in.
I like that. I like that the common thread is hope. I said that you were the beacon of hope for Ntombi. Are you hopeful, just based on, the landscape that the Deputy Minister has painted?
For me personally, hope is a very disempowering concept, because what are you going to hope for? It has to move beyond hope. And I'm glad the Minister has very clearly alluded to the policy framework, the district evolution. And in the previous panel, it was very clearly outlined. The challenge is not around getting policies and regulations in place. We have it all in place. So the big bad wolf in South Africa at the moment is procurement, because procurement is the single most powerful lever to unlock potential and opportunity. Zimbabwe, leading to Mozambique, leading to Botswana. Those roads take of how women trade in the informal sector. And so at the BBC, we are very clear around the development of township and rural economies, village economies. It's not ironic. We could have and we should have used COVID to completely re-engineer our supply chain and our enterprise development, so that when we talked about deep cleaning of schools, when we talked about the provision of masks, gloves, etc., in villages and in townships, why is it that we did not provide opportunities at that level? Township women, this is the opportunity. There's no rocket science. It doesn't require us to redo anything. It just to get rid of feeding the bad wolf. Do you know, I am flabbergasted that the Central Supplier Database only procured to the tune of 35 billion from black business, out of a total spend of, guess what, 1.2 billion. Now, when you disaggregate the 53 billion, we cannot get a sixth disaggregated number. So I know I'm very, and I was told to be calm in this interview, but it's very hard to be calm.
You're passionate, and that's fine.
I'm slightly angry You know, we don't have collateral as black women. So the collateral is cash. Put cash in our hands, because cash feeds our children. Cash educates our children, because the public service facilities don't work. And Ntombi needs a public service that works for her and all the other Ntombis in this country. It requires a deliberate resolve to say, we are going to feed the good wolf. I'm going to calm down now.
Thank you, Judy. What is your message to the Ntombis and everybody watching today, Deputy Minister?
I think we all agree. Government is the biggest supplier of goods in any country. The question is, I think, taking from what Judy is saying, how do we ensure that we move beyond having policies that accommodate women, youth, and persons with disability, but that in action we deliberately ensure that the actual opportunities are allocated to women directly? I need to emphasize there is a commitment and a political will to ensure that we use the next decade for greater impact and for an equal future.
I think Ms. Mazibuko said it well as well, the change agents. We are those change agents, from passion to a woman who has endured pain. Our gender-based violence survivor and activist who has requested to remain anonymous digs deep as she shares with us her moment of pain.
Mina okwenzeka kimi okwangivisa ubuhlungu engibengaboni leso sikhathi, ngangihlala nobaba umntwana am-abuser kabuhlungu, thula ngoba bengingazi ukuthi ngizokushonaphi, ngithula. And ngoba be-abuse umntwana lona, mina ngibona ukuthi akangishayi, bengiboni ukuthi kuyinkinga ngalamanye amagama. Athi noma ambethile umntwana amshaye kabuhlungu, ngibona ukuthi umntwana akasi-right, ngingathathi, angazi ukuthi ngizokwenzani, angazi ukuthi ngizokushonaphi. Phela konke lokhu umntwana abethwa, ahlukunyezwa, athukwa, nami athuka onke amagama, aphinza athi nathi uyagculisa ngingabi nenkinga ngoba ngingazi ukuthi ngizokuyaphi. Ngoba ngesikhathi isimo sokuhlupheka siyakwenza, ngibona ukuthi ukukhanya sengibonile, ukubekezelela into engasi-right. Ngamane ngilalela kahle kunokuthi ngibekezelele kuhlupheka, swela. And nesikhathi nawuswela uthola eceleni ikujikela ingasakufuni, ugcine wena ngasikhathi ngwelo ngumntwana nesigcino umkhathi ugcine uyakuzonda. Ungibona bonga ukuthi ngigcine sengiyibonile into leyo, ngabe sesengiyaphuma lapho ngakhona ukuthi ngizile nami ngibone ukuthi ngizame ukuthi ngihlanganisa njani ukuthi umntwana abe right.
Listen, our gender-based violence activist and survivor, for the bravery it took to share with us all her story. Deputy Minister, a story we've heard today, a story that we continue hearing in South Africa about the constant abuse of women and children.
Siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi uma ukuthi aphuza amanzi akhulume ngento eza omama abaningi. Kuhle umuntu asukume njengalabo mama baka 1956, kumele umuntu asukume alwe, asifune ukuthi ubani, afune ukuthi yini angazenzela yona. Kodwa into futhi ukuthi nohulumente wethu uningi asekubekile emphakathini kokusiza umama osefuna ukusukuma, njengalezi zinto abakwazi ukuthi basuse, ziyasiza ngoba umuntu uphosa ikhaya, uba isikhathi sokuyicabanga kahle lento ukuthi izophuma kanjani kuyo, yini engazenzela yona. Ngokwami-ke ngibona ngathi masikhuthaze omama abaningi ukuthi uma uhlukumezwa, ukuthula kuyokucindezela nokuthula. into enkulu ukuthi ukhulume, into enkulu ukuthi ufune usizo. Nama-police station wethu manje awasekho lapha bekhona khona izolo abebefika bangavumi nokuvula icase bethi hayi umkhwenyana wakho. Upresident wethu wathi ngisho ama-case athathwanga dala mawavulwe. Sokukuningi-ke osekubekiwe nje uhulumeni kokulwa nalolu dlame esikhuluma ngalo. Kumele thina sukume singabomama nentsha yethu nabo baba basukumile kakhulu bathi akuzukwenzeka lento egameni labo.
We have heard from our panelists, and they have indeed highlighted a myriad of issues that affect the women today and also have potential to hinder their development if not addressed. The discussion opens up dialogues on how we, as a nation, government, and relevant organizations, advance the realization of women's rights for an equal future. I will now usher the platform to the President himself during these difficult times to deliver the 2020 Women's Day keynote address.
Women of South Africa, on this Women's Day, I greet you, the inherited noble legacy of the women of 1950. 64 years ago, our mothers, sisters, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers stood defiant and proud, united in their demand to live in freedom. They stood not for themselves alone, but for the rights of the generations of women yet to come. This day provides all of us with an opportunity to reflect. We have traveled as a country. We have made much progress that we can be proud of. We have made gains in advancing women's rights, in broadening women's access to education, provision of health and social support, and in improving their participation in the economy and decision making. At the same time, for millions of women, is very different to the promise that is contained in our Constitution. We know that millions of South African women still live in conditions of poverty and unemployment. They face discrimination and violence all the time. To give effect to our commitment to the upliftment of women, South Africa has joined Generation Equality, a global campaign to achieve gender equality by 2030. As two actions, one on rights and the other gender-based violence and femicide. Civil society and the action to work with other world leaders to achieve real change in the lives of women. As we mark Women's Day this year, South Africa, the pandemics, the corona, and the scourge of and femicide. Ever more women and children are being and lives at the hands of men. It cannot be that this Women's Day is drenched in the tears of families who have lost their sisters, their daughters, and mothers to men. This cannot continue. Ignore the cries of women and children for help and justice. It has been 11 months since I addressed a joint sitting of Parliament to announce an emergency response action plan to combat gender-based violence and femicide. we have taken concrete actions to provide great and care to survivors of gender-based violence. We have increased the number of shelters, care centers for survivors, and improved the capacity of our police to deal with the crimes of gender-based violence. We have made important progress in reforming our laws to give greater protection to survivors of domestic and sexual violence. We now also have a national strategic plan, which, among other things, aims to promote women's economic inclusion. One of the most important ways to reduce vulnerability to gender is to enable them to become financially independent. With the launch of education equality and with the implementation of the plan, we have a unique opportunity to reform our society and the lives of the women of our country. We have an opportunity to build a country in which women's rights to dignity, to security, to safety, and to protection is not negotiable. It requires bold and measurable actions by government, society, the private sector, and all actors for meaningful change. Today, we commit to a new social compact with the women of this country, informed by our collective commitment to gender equality. This will be driven by prudence. The first action is to expand the access of women to economic opportunities. We will do this by setting up to 40% of public procurement for women-owned businesses. We expect national department government to monitor how many women have participated in each public procurement process. They will have to have clear plans on how they will broaden women's participation over the next 12 months. As the chair of the African Union, we will also be working on policy guidelines to help member states on the continent develop interventions. The second is to support women who operate small and micro businesses, including those who operate in the informal sector. Lack of access to financial services, as well as digital identification, tends to limit participation of women and their ability to conduct business. Generation equality, supporting African Union member states drive adopt digital IDs. We will engage the financial sector to strengthen efforts to make financial services accessible and affordable for women in South Africa. The third action is to speed up the process of giving women access to productive assets, such as land. We will ensure that our own land reform process favors all historically disadvantaged people, including women, in getting land and the means to farm it. Of the 75 million rand in COVID-19 relief earmarked for input vouchers, 53% will be rural women. We must ensure that assistance and small-scale farmers continue to receive support beyond the lockdown that we're going through now. At the same time, we are calling on the African Union member states to put policy is to in the workplace. Generation equality at a national and regional level towards the ratification of the International Labour Organization Convention on Violence and Harassment in the Workplace. The urgency of achieving gender equality has never been greater than now. The coronavirus has left none of us, but it's those who already face economic insecurity, poverty, who have been hardest to support against gender-based violence. The Solidarity Fund has approved a 17 million rand project to expand services and support the network of Tutuzela care centers. A portion of this also go towards Violence Command Center. To ensure women are not made more vulnerable during the lockdown, we have put mechanisms in place, not just for social support, but also to help businesses. Of the 12.6 people who received social grants during the month of June, 10.5 or 83% were women aged 60 years and older. This week, about 4 million South African women have received the social relief of this grant. The food parcels distributed through the Department and the Solidarity Fund have reached just over 1 million families, among them women-headed families. In the second round of food relief, the fund will distribute this month in the form of vouchers. Some 40 to 50% of the target beneficiaries will be women. COVID relief is also being provided to women-owned SMEs through our development finance institutions. For example, the total number of SMEs benefiting from the debt relief finance scheme, 33% women-owned businesses. The Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC, also directed a significant portion of its funding approvals to supporting youth and empowered businesses. We have prioritized Black-owned and women-owned businesses in the procurement of personal protective. There have been a number of success stories of women either starting to produce personal equipment or modifying existing business operations. We are deeply concerned about the corruption and our next effort to make PPEs accessible to our hard-working social and health workers. We expect the law enforcement agencies to find the culprits and ensure they face the full might of this pandemic has demonstrated our ability to support the greater economic in real terms. This good work must not end when the pandemic is over. We must maintain the momentum. The generation of 1956 mobilized, organized, and stood firm in their demands for their rights to be respected. The women who in recent past have taken to the streets and gender-based violence, femicide, forward that the mothers, the sisters of 1956 embarked upon. Under generation equality, we want to see women's full empowerment achieved by this generation within a generation. This is our responsibility as a nation. It is our goal. if we each play this happen. The time for talk is over. This is now the time for action. Day. I thank you and I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for your intriguing address. It's comforting and also such a relief for us women to hear encouraging and assuring words from the President, especially during these difficult times exacerbated by the pandemic. Women's circumstances have been made worse, not only financially, but some are not feeling safe, confined in their homes. It has been great listening to the President touch on the sub-themes raised by our panelists earlier and endorsing the women's agenda. I'd like to reiterate that it has been a privilege to moderate a panel of women who have taken over the baton from women of yesteryear and continue to advance issues of women for equality and equity in the 21st century South Africa. With consistency and tenacity, we shall certainly realize women's rights for the development of our country. We've come to the end of our program, and I will emphasize that it is every citizen's responsibility to work hard towards realizing women's safety, development, and ensure women enjoy their basic rights in their country. We can indeed then be a generation equality practically, not only on the constitutional document. In our closing virtual program for 2020 Women's Day commemoration, more beautiful performances by beautiful Mzansi women will follow. From me, Romy Titus, have a happy Women's Day.
Women of Africa are strong. I'm a Korsika, say Africa. Panamata, women of Africa belong. I'm a Korsika, say Africa. Panamata, women of Africa, women of Africa. The time has come to stand as one. I'm a Korsika, say Africa. Panamata, a brand new future has begun. I'm a Korsika, say Africa. Panamata, women of Africa, women of Africa, women around the world, we stand as one. Together we can show just what can be done. Your woman caring ways, and we need you. Your strength and dignity will carry us through. Women of Africa, women of Africa. Abafazi, Paramanda. Abafazi, Paramanda. Happy Women's Day, my sisters. What can I say? We found ourselves living in a strange, strange world this 2020. But this is our month, and together we will carve another deep groove in women's rights in South Africa. I wish all of you the best Women's Day, and let us stay together where our voices are being heard, and may they be heard louder and louder. We have been given this incredible platform from those women who marched on the Union buildings in 1956, led by Sophia de Bruyn. And what can I say? As the young people come up, they are being heard, they're being stronger. And whilst we are amidst a crisis with women abuse and gender-based violence, we must not forget that we, abafazi banamandla, wabathinta bafazi, wabathinta bagoto. Never forget.
Women of Africa, women of, women of, women of Africa.
A beautiful way to end an incredibly important message, not just from some of the most influential women in South Africa and Africa, but also from the President himself, President Cyril Ramaphosa, delivering that virtual keynote address, this very special Women's Day message with the theme, the title, Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights for an Equal Future. If you did miss any of that important message, our online team have got that on the website. It was fairly lengthy, just over an hour. You can go and watch it in its entirety on